attention is the most valuable commodity of a human being, and that anything that results in the theft of your attention strikes at the core essence of your value. Gaining mastery over the way life presents to you has been afforded to people on the condition that they become a recluse from life and enter a monastery.
What was it that your clinic did differently from everyone else that made such a difference to your clinic and your community?
Everybody talks about insight and inner balance in an abstraction. I framed it in actual action.
Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead today. Joining me is Dr. Ravi Iyer. Dr. Iyer is a multi-book author, multi-million view 3x TEDx speaker who is in the less than 1% of iconoclasts whose talks have been taken down and then reinstated by TED. He's also a Who's Who in America nominee, a Harvard-trained physician, a global educator, and a human potential development expert. Welcome, Dr. Iyer.
Oh, hi, Michael. I had to laugh at the iconoclast thing.
That is one of the most interesting parts of a bio I have gotten to read so far. What was it that they took you down for, and why did they put you back up?
They took me down twice, but the first time I published a book along with my talk. My talk went on YouTube, and I published a book about my journey to the TED stage. And I had taken an image from Shutterstock, which I thought was copyright free. Uh, uh, but they objected to the fact that they felt it violated their license to the TED logo, and the red carpet on that image on the cover of the book was proprietary to TED, I believe, or at least that's what they insisted. So very curiously, what they did was, instead of emailing me and telling me that I had violated, they just decided to take my talk down without notifying me why they were doing it. Now, for all reasons, just imagine you go and give a lecture somewhere, and then later you happen to write a book, and they object to the book and they take your lecture down. How are the two things related? But in their mind, that was their way of enforcement. Rather juvenile way of doing it, I would think, because my own assessment is this: the adult way would have been, and considering that TED is a forum for extremely accomplished people, talking about their work, I would expect an organization like TED to actually send a polite email to people and say that, hey, you happen to have infringed upon our rights. Maybe you didn't intend to, but you did. But can you please stop infringing? Instead of that, they took my talk down and waited for a good 2 weeks, uh, or maybe about 8 or 9 days before they let me know why. And they did that only after I went on social media and I said, I don't know why they did it. And because I had sufficient following on social media, so people were all irate, then they came out and said, oh, this is why we did it. I said, "Oh, really? Why didn't you tell me in the first place? I would have taken my book down." And I did. I changed the cover, I changed the title, it was done. But uh, very juvenile way of enforcement, in my opinion. And that seems to be a pattern in that organization, very passive aggressive uh, mode of operation, uh, and also very cliquish kind of, like there is an inner crowd that incestuously talks to each other and promotes and self-promotes. For me, it, it was amusing because the work I do is followed by about 300 million students in Asia. Uh, and TED, TED and TEDx stages is a way station for me in the context of the larger work I do. It's more like a comma in a sentence in a chapter of my life work. So it, it doesn't matter. My talk is right now around 2.5 million views and climbing.
Nice. And then what was the second time?
The second time was my second talk in February. I gave that, and came out in May 5th. And by May 20th, it had crossed 1.75 million views. And then they took that talk down. That is still out. It is not. And their argument, which they said was, I was giving too many talks, and that TED is a stage for people who don't have otherwise have a stage to broadcast their ideas. So, it was like they're coming and telling me that you're monopolizing the TED stage. Please step down and give other people a chance. I said, okay, fine, go ahead.
Interesting. So opposite the image they project that I have of them.
Yeah, very much so. On one side, they project the image that they are all about spreading of ideas, but in actuality, they are about the spread of ideas that they consider worthy of spreading. So they need to control the spread. So that's what they're all about.
When Dr. Iyer, did you first recognize that integrating your whole self and bringing that into everything that you do might be a valuable approach?
So the, I mean, I always knew it, but I never really, it never coalesced until the pandemic that the ability to really integrate the totality of your being into the way you navigate your life is so critical to the way you live and conduct your business. And that insight kind of hit me like a ton of bricks during the pandemic because the whole world the pandemic in a sense was an experiment. It was a global experiment that ripped away the facade of normalcy across the entire world and forced the entire world to come to grips with the essential unpredictableness of human existence. And when that happened, you began to see who had their act together and who was just uh, playing a game. And uh, and sadly, the vast majority of the world did not have their act together. And they were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And at that time, my clinic and the team I was leading, we were able to not only successfully navigate the pandemic for ourselves, but we were able to conduct an entire community of about 100,000 people through the pandemic without losing their bearings. And after the pandemic was over, I decided that I needed to take the methodology and techniques that we used from a one to one person transmission that I had been doing for 42 years. I decided that I needed to take it to a one to many platform. So I wrote a book, and then from there, I started talking about it on podcasts and stuff like that. And about 50, 60 podcasts later, I decided to do a TED Talk. And that went viral. And after that, I felt that I needed to amplify the idea further. And I started give a second talk on the idea of how attention is the most valuable commodity of a human being, and that anything that results in the theft of your attention strikes at the core essence of your value. That was my second TED talk. And then the third one that I gave in March was about how community essentially defines the the ability of a message to get propagated. And so these three things, focus, connection, and community, was the three pillars of performance. And I started uh, propagating that in my work and started actually becoming vocal about it. But the essence is this all these things that I talk about is not new. It's been there for centuries. But for centuries, the methodology of gaining mastery over the way life presents to you has been afforded to people on the condition that A, they rec- become a recluse from life and enter a monastery, and there they find mastery over how life presents. But that is not an option anymore in today's world. People need to be shown how to gain mastery over their lives while they are in the midst of it. And that is so I basically took ancient methodologies and ancient wisdom and reframed it in the idiom, metaphor, and language of modern dialogue. And uh, so instead of using words like consciousness and self, I use words like your perception and your narrative. Instead of saying go into a thought free state, I say your narratives are just your meaning making machine giving meanings. And that is the menu of the meal of life. And people are eating the menu instead of the meal. So these are the analogies I use. Uh, they are not new, they have been spoken about before, but I just present it differently.
What was it that your clinic did differently from everyone else that made such a difference to your clinic and your community then and is making such a difference to the people you talk with now?
So, one of the first things we did was see, everybody talks about insight and inner balance in an abstraction. I framed it in actual action. For example, people talk about, oh, we have to feel connected. We are all our brother's keeper. But I said in my clinic, we translated our brother's keeper into a policy that we called the Three Musketeers policy. The Three Musketeers policy was borrowed from the Alexander Dumas movie, All for One, One for All, where every member of the team was taught to act only for the preservation of their fellow member, not their own. And when I instituted that as a policy, we started by making we would go out into the parking lot to treat COVID patients in their cars, and each we would go out in teams of two, where one person would watch out for the other person. So the other person is actually uh, doing the swab, the nasal swab, getting exposed to the biological fluids and biological products. And the other person is standing there watching intently if there was a break in infection control. And if there was any break, immediately she had a gun where she would spray disinfectant upon her partner. So, in this way, we kept each other safe. But that came directly out of this idea that each person's safety was dependent on the other person being safe. And it was directly an extension of the biblical phrase, "You are your brother's keeper." And so rather than just talking about those phrases in the abstract, we actually put it into practice and brought it in a concrete way as a way of being and living and and conducting our business. Then the other thing was the idea that right at the beginning of the pandemic, we said that fear is the real virus, and the fear was the real contagion, and we decided that we will actually devote a significant amount of our time and effort to combating fear at every level. But by that we meant that we have to conduct ourselves without fear when we are dealing with people, and we cannot exclude. So rather than abstract talking about, oh, we are inclusive, we have diversity, equity, inclusion, instead of using those as catch-all phrases, we translate it into actual action. And it made a huge impact the minute we did it. For example, um, early on, we decided that we are going to create a mobile unit where we would actually go out into patients' homes, patients who were not sick enough to get hospitalized, but too sick to come to the office. We actually did house calls, and we uh, carried a portable camp shower, erected the camp shower as a changing station on the driveway, and would change into our gear inside the camp shower and then go out into the patient's home and then come back and change back. Things like that. We used a lot of innovative methodologies. For example, the PPE, single use PPE, disposable PPE was too expensive. We leveraged wind cheaters and snow pants that keep you dry from snow meltwater. Well, if it can keep you dry from snow meltwater, it can keep you dry from a cough and a sneeze too. So we used that, and and at the end of the day, we would go home and change in the garage and drop it into the hot water cycle of the washing machine, and it was ready for the next day. So mm, practical solutions, and all of this was being done at a time when the media and the official channels of public health information was, you know, occupied by people talking of injecting bleach into people. So, it was an immense incongruity. I had this population of 100,000 people who got better information and better guidance than the coronavirus briefings that was being done by the administration. So it was quite on one side it was comical. On another side it was tragic also. So so after the pandemic was over, I said, you know what, I need to get people moving beyond the narratives that was dividing them. And that was when I realized that if you are able to stay anchored to your perception and you can step away from the narratives that are not productive, and in this way you can decide which narratives you want to use to determine your actions.
What was it that enabled you and your team to come up with all these simple, pragmatic solutions when everyone else was struggling to bring all the tech and still not able to come up to do anything have the same effect?
um, the the people were blindsided. The vast First of all, it is not like they did not know anything about virology or infectious epidemiology. That knowledge was very widely present, but the people who had the knowledge were silenced. The people who didn't have the knowledge had the microphone and the megaphone. As a result, you know, and everyone was waiting to be told what to do. There was no willingness to actually take initiative. And this is not just at the official level. Even at the local level, I found a lot of physician colleagues paralyzed. They rather shut their doors. A- n- 85% of physician practices shut down during the pandemic to inpatient care, in-person care. And we, on the other hand, opened our doors wide open. We moved from a 3,000 square foot office to a 3,000 square foot office with a 12,000 square foot parking lot. And we were seeing 100 people a day. It was huge. Um, and it was absolutely, give an example, Lysol and Clorox was not available because of short supply. But no one, occurred to no one that swimming pool disinfectant was available by the concentrate. 1 gallon of swimming pool disinfectant lasted us 3 years because all we had to do was take a small thimble full of that disinfectant and mix it into a larger container of water, and we had, you know, virucidal spray for everyone in the office. Um, Example, uh, simple things like uh, rubber garden shoes became office footwear for everyone. So everyone was told to walk into the office. They will go into a closet, they will change out of whatever dress they were wearing from home and hang it up there. And they would change into the snow pants and wind cheaters and these uh, rubber shoes. And then step out, and we had a Rubbermaid basin with a little bit of water containing swimming pool disinfectant. And you just step into that, just like the way you step into your, we know you have these little foot wash basins in a swimming pool, like that, where people, so like that, we would just wash our feet and then walk all around the place. Uh, we had UV lamps burning inside our closet. So at the end of the day, we would hang our clothes there, turn on the UV lamp on a timer for 15 minutes, and our clothes were all disinfected by UV. So things like that. It was available. Everyone knows what to do, but they could not put it together.
Why do you suppose that is? These are the kind of innovations that every leader everywhere wants to bring to their team, and especially these being so simple to implement. You didn't have to bring in loads of technology and retrain everybody to a whole new paradigm and all these other things. You just went down to the hardware store and bought a few things and came back and you were set.
Exactly.
What
Yeah.
helped you do that? That No one
So
else
I'll give you an
can.
example. I belong to a 300 physician group. So when I broadcast my techniques to the rest of the group, I got a very, uh, uh, you know, highfalutin email from one of the infectious disease experts in the group saying that. So one of the things I said was we would go, the, the infected patients, we would tell them to come in their cars and they would sit in the car. So the car became their mobile containment unit. I had a piece of plastic, like a plastic sheet, that I would drape onto their window, right? And it had a little magnetic strip on top that I bought from Amazon. So I would just put that onto the car, it'll stick. So now you have a plastic transparent sheet over their window, and my hands would go in and I would do the swaps. But this sheet is between me and so of course I'm also wearing a mask, but it's an extra layer. And then we had a clip-on fan that we would clip on to the visor of their side view mirror of their car. And this fan is blowing air into the car. So I have a sheet, I have air blowing in, and I'm drawing a sample there. So if the person happened to sneeze, because they would, when I push things up their nose, they would sneeze. The air is blowing the snot back at them, not onto me. So the infectious disease person said, by putting the fan, you are aerosolizing the virus all over the place. And I said, up yours, you keep it. I think I'm going to continue doing that. A year later, it came out that good cross ventilation was the best way to reduce the risk of infection. And the whole idea of infective burden came out. So these were the, the real problem during the pandemic was lack of informed leadership and a lack of coherent messaging. Everyone was jumping around trying to say whatever they wanted to say. And people like me, we just disregarded them and decided to go our own way and do it and keep our people safe. That's it. I didn't have time to argue with people.
For leaders who find themselves in a similar position as you, where they have brilliant ideas, it's working great for them, everyone else is shutting them down, how, what's their best way to soldier on through it and keep doing what they know is right for them and their team?
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, it's not easy. Uh, at some point, you have to take a stand and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I believe in. And this is I'm a physician. One of the things I remember very clearly having a meeting very early on in the pandemic, and people were saying maybe we have to shut down. I said, no, we're not going to shut down. We are the last line of defense. I mean, we are healthcare leaders. We are physicians. This is what we do. If we were to run, then what is the purpose of whatever we did for, I've been a physician for 42 years this year. And, it doesn't make sense. I can't just walk away from my entire life. And just because, yes, there is a risk for disease and there is a risk for me too. But that does not, I mean, at some point you have to take a stand and say that this is where I stand. I can do no other. And, so that's what we did. And therein comes the conviction of what you believe in. You believe that this is what, you know, There is nothing else to be done. There is no more arguments to be made. No more. This is it. That's it. This is what I'm going to do, and you join me or you move out of the way.
What has what tells you when you have a situation like this where this is your fundamental value and this is what you're going to do versus something that maybe matters less and it's not such a big deal? Do you go a different way?
So, when I made this decision, I had opposition from people in my family too. They were all panicking. They were saying, "Oh, you're doing something without uh, good good sense. You are unnecessarily putting yourself at risk. You're putting everyone at risk. This, that." And at some point, you say, "That's fine. This is what I'm going to do. You don't like it, do whatever you want." And you have to suffer that. There's no other way. You have to suffer that. You feel sad at some point. At certain points, you do feel sad that you don't have support. But uh, but that wasn't for very long. It was the month of March that I saw the maximum amount of resistance and the maximum amount of finger pointing and blame casting. By the end of March of 2020, everyone had come on and said, "You know what, this guy is doing it right. I'm going to join him." So everything became okay. Uh, but that first month was pretty lonely. Yeah, that's just the way it is.
What gave you the resilience to sustain that first month when everyone else thought you were crazy?
A belief in who I am as a person, uh, my own my own belief of myself as a physician, as a person who's the last person standing between me and the reaper. Between my patient and the reaper, I'm the one standing. I remember very clearly. Um, I once said this to a student, a medical student. In my clinic, medical students come through, they cycle through as part of their training. And I said to him once that being a physician is, you have to understand that your role, you are an advocate for the patient, and you are actually the one person who are always going to be acting on behalf of the patient. And if you do your role well, death will stop before you and ask your permission to step aside so that he can go in and claim the patient. If you are really, really committed to your job, death will give you the dignity of asking your permission. That
Have you
kind of belief is what has fueled me. That's how I live. That's how I function. There are not too many people like me, but but there are people like me. I'm not the only one.
has that depth of belief always been present for you?
Over the years, I it has become very deep. Um, Instinctively, I I remember when I was 28, I once told my dad that every other role that I occupy in life will go away, but this one thing that will never go away is being a physician. See, there will come a day when I will no longer be a father, I'll no longer be a son, I'll no longer be a husband or a brother. But as long as I am taking a breath, I'll always be a physician. That's who I am. And my job in this world, this is what I was made to be, to enable, to empower people to transcend the circumstances that life throws at them. And that's what I do even now, even as a leader or as a coach. That's what I do. I help people transcend the circumstances that life throws at them. And I do only one of three things: either I remove the obstacle, or I reduce its impact, or if I can't do those two things, then I teach them how to live with the obstacle and still function despite it. So those are the only three things I do at all times. And when the obstacle is biological, I use the technique of science and medicine to transcend that. When it is psychological, I use the mental health disciplines to transcend that. And when it is functional or organizational, then I use the technique of human relationships and human transactions to transcend that.
How do you build cultures where people feel safe and empowered to transcend these limitations?
The 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 only thing that a leader does is a leader creates a space around them wherein people who follow that leader, the tribe of that leader, experience an expansion in the possibilities available to them. The leader does not tell people what to do. He creates an environment where the people who are with the leader experience an expansion of possibilities. And part of doing that is to preserve a sense of continuity and safety for the people. Because if there is no safety, there is no possibility available. So you can't create an expansion of possibility when the integrity of your own safety is at risk. So the basic elements of physical integrity, psychological integrity, and social integrity has to be preserved by a leader. And once that is preserved, then the leader creates a certain amount of space where such that the people in with with the leader experience an opportunity that they did not otherwise would not exist for them. Um, that kind of leadership is sorely required in this day and time. And I do believe that that leadership will come back. Right now, we don't have that in plenty. I'm not saying it is not present entirely, it is there in bits and pieces, but it is not present in a uninterrupted flow.
If I would like to build that more for myself and bring it more of a flow versus the bits and pieces that I may have today, how can I get started?
So, the essence of discovering space for it begins with discovering space for yourself. Now, mm, human beings, we live our life. We have two methods of knowing our life. One is through the perception of our five senses. And then almost immediately with that perception comes a meaning making operation that takes over that perception and makes it mean something, gives it a name, form, a certain value, a certain like, dislike, a certain preference. And then, based on that preference, a certain choice emerges. Most people don't see them, they see their life experience, their lived experience is all in the meaning making machine. They don't see their lived experience as perception. Now, so most people view their life as if they are a narrative. They have a narrative. I am a black man. I'm a white man. I'm a human being. I'm a father, a mother, or a brother, or a certain professional of certain kind. So each one of these is a narrative, is the identity that is actually a narrative. And they consider themselves as the narrative. They don't consider themselves as a space within which narratives pop up as an optional condition. There is when you view your life as a preconditioned narrative, possibilities that are available to you are grossly limited. And not only are they grossly limited, they are also very much accidental. You have very little power to influence how the direction in which your life goes. So when your life experience, when your lived experience is determined by the narratives of your life, then whatever circumstance creates the narrative controls the way your life shows up. But if you are able to actually stand before your narratives as a space within which the narratives pop up, your identity is not determined by the narrative. Your identity is the space within which narratives pop up, and therefore you are never at threat. And for the first time, you have the freedom to actually pick and choose. And that intense freedom allows you to be creative. It allows you to not buy into the dominant conversation and actually see opportunities where something like swimming pool disinfectant becomes an available possibility. Something like wind cheaters and snow pants become available as possibilities. But whereas if your narrative was I am the person who's going to depend on all these other things to determine how I'll respond to a crisis, then you are not a space. You are already predetermined and your choices. So that is the essence. Now, how do you develop the ability to remain a space? You develop by spending at least 5 minutes every day. It's like a muscle. You have to develop. See, if I have to develop my biceps, I have to go to the gym. I have to lift weights. I have to do so many reps, and I have to I have to dedicate space and time for developing the muscle of my biceps. Like that, you have to dedicate some space and time to develop the muscle of your observational capacity, your ability to focus on perception and step away from the narrative. So everything that is like people talk about meditation. Meditation is nothing but an observational exercise. The Japanese tea ceremony is an observational exercise. Some people go into observational exercise by painting. But regardless, all these exercises allow you to step away and get closer to the actual perception of your five senses. And you can do that. You can take a piece of chocolate and put it in your tongue and focus on the taste of the chocolate from the tip of your tongue to the back of your throat before you swallow it. And that becomes an observational exercise. Most people eat chocolate, they're not even aware of it going down. But if you actually, you know, a French chef said, you got to make love to your food with all of your mouth. People don't eat like that, you know. But when you do, you suddenly realize that just one or two mouthfuls will fill you up. And I often say that the reason why people eat the fifth mouthful is because they never tasted the first four. So this is how people live their life. They live their life sitting at the restaurant of life and choosing to eat the menu that describes the meal instead of the meal. And then they wonder why their life tastes horrible. So and then we live life saying that, oh, life is so insipid, it is so boring, There's no vitality, there's no vibrancy, nothing exciting going on. We got to go on a vacation. And then they'll take a vacation to some place, Everest Base Camp, Kilimanjaro, Bora Bora, Tahiti, somewhere where none of the narratives of their past apply anymore. And there, for the first time, they experience, because their experience is no longer filtered by the narratives of their past experience. And then they make the fatal error that they have to do that kind of escape from reality to actually experience, when all you had to do was sit in your backyard and learn to actually pay attention to your five senses.
I like this a lot. Reframing meditation as an observation exercise for
Yeah,
some people.
people make meditation into a narrative also. They'll say, "Oh, I'm going to sit down and then I'm going to do this," and they don't realize that they have just converted meditation into a narrative. No, there is no narrative in meditation. It's all feeling. So people have a problem feeling. They they would rather describe the experience than actually feel it, because to feel it means they have to open themselves up, and it is scary to open. So it means you have to become vulnerable. I'm sorry I cut you off there, because I had this thought about meditation.
Yes, I agree. Uh, I was saying that reframing meditation as observation opens the possibilities so wide that, and so for people where the classical forms of meditation don't work, it gives so many more possibilities that it doesn't have to
So your
be.
whole life becomes meditation,
Yes.
because then you can go and do it anywhere, any place, because you can do meditation sitting at the toilet, having a bowel movement. I'll be honest, I have meditated on the sensation of my rear end expanding to expel excreta. That is observation. You'll be amazed how it feels.
Yes, it can be profound. The most quotidian aspects of our existence can be transcendental.
Profound. Yes. And then when you live life like that, every second is a joy. Every second is a surprise, because every second is never the same. It's everything is always new.
When you're talking with business leaders about this, about this, how do you connect this joy of every moment being an observational joy to what's the business value of working on these kind of personal transformations?
So one of the beauty about it is you don't need to transform somebody or show them the value of transformation. All you have to do is shift their identity from narrative to space. And then the state of being connected with that space automatically produces the emergence of transformative experiences for them. So I don't have to tell you that it's going to be like this. Like, uh, just as a fruit ripens in the presence of the sun does not have to do anything other than just shine. It doesn't have to dictate the rate or the type of fruit that is ripened. All fruits will ripen in their own pace, at their own flavor, and in their own way. All the sun has to do is be present. Like that, in the space of transformative experience, what happens is people have a spontaneous emergence of this. So in an exercise, what I do is I show people, and the reason why people are unable to get in touch is they don't recognize it when they are in it. So they confuse it with something else. So all you have to do is dispel the confusion and show them that this is what they actually experience. And then once they recognize it, they are able to identify it for themselves. So one of the exercises I do is I tell two people, and one person is describing some event in their life, and the other person has to listen to that person, but he has to listen to that person not for the person from the perspective of actually understanding the words, but as a space that receives the sound of this person's speech. Passively be a space where the sound of that person's speech penetrates. And invariably, at every point when this happens, if I am being the space and you are the person speaking, invariably the person who's speaking says, I have never felt so well understood by the other person. And this person, when at the end of the exercise, we ask this person, what did you hear? He will say, I didn't hear anything. All I was focusing was this person's sound. And that person, on the other hand, says, I felt totally heard. And then a more interesting thing comes. Then you take this exercise. At the end of the exercise, I'd say, okay, now that you were the space of sound for this person, can you then tell something of value to the other person? And then this guy will say something, and invariably, the words that this person says has great value for the other person. And even though this person has not been focusing on any of the story that the other person has been saying. And the reason for this is when this exercise happens as space, the other person who's speaking begins to open up. And in that, see, most of us, when we are talking to each other, we are not listening. We are only talking to respond. We are listening to respond. We are speaking. So, so when I say something, you are listening to me, but there's a voice inside you that's telling you what you are hearing. So you're really not listening to me, you're listening to yourself say to you what you are hearing. And that when you shut that thing off, suddenly I become I begin to get the experience of actually being heard. And out of that experience, when you actually say something, I don't listen to say something back, I listen to receive. So this kind of dialogue becomes very powerful in environment. So when in my clinic, when we talk to each other, we are attentive to each other, and we are not jumping to conclusions, or and it is not like as if we are conducting our life as if we are interacting as if every interaction is a therapy session. No, it's not like that. But there is a sense of deep connection and relationship that exists.
Everything we've
And
talked
once you
about,
experience it for the first time, once you experience for the first time, then you don't let go of it.
yes, those experiences are so profound.
Yeah.
It's like having a sixth, seventh, and eighth sense awaken.
Yes.
Everything we've talked about today, Dr. Iyer, is can help people find their way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that is everywhere these days. If there's one place that people should start, to find their way through life, where would you suggest that is?
Find some time to sit by yourself and watch the cadence of your own breath, the tides of your own breath. Don't need to control it, just watch it. Practice observation there. And from there, you extend it to other activities. As you observe, you will start noticing things. You'll start acquiring certain capacities. One of the first capacities would be an increasing sense of ease as you go through life. You'll also notice a slow, um, gradual decrease in the internal chatter inside your head. Then the next phase would be you will notice that people who come to you feel calmer around you. The internal quietude that you experience radiates around you such that the people who come in your presence, they feel more comfortable. They feel their internal chatter tends to quieten down when they're around you, and they will like being around you. They will say sometimes will say that somehow I my thoughts are clearer with you when I'm with you. The teams you lead, they are able to perform better when you are with them. So that's the second thing. The other thing that you will notice as you get deeper and deeper and more skilled in the art of of existing as a space is that the unspoken intentions and thoughts of other people become more transparently visible to you. Uh, it's not like you're mind reading or anything. It's just that you become more sensitive and you are able to perceive where their inner propensity is leading them. And in conversations, when you have that insight into what is going on in the other person's head, you frequently are able to interject, intervene, and talk in language that connects much deeper. And therefore, your capacity to convince, persuade, and sway people to your way of thinking becomes more powerful as you go along. So, in this manner, these skills develop, and along with these skills, your ability to impact your surroundings become more powerful. Leadership is fundamentally the ability to impact the thought process of people around you, and therefore your ability as a leader begins to start emerging. People start coming to you and asking you for your advice or asking you to take charge of certain things when normally they would not have offered you that position. So your rise in society begins to start happening. So these things begin to accrue in a very steady, almost, I call it like the wafting fragrance of the night jasmine. It kind of just spreads like the fragrance of a flower in through your life, permeating it. And suddenly you look back and say, "Oh my God!" But suddenly all the successes are coming to me without, and it'll seem effortless. When what is actually happening is you're no longer thrashing with the current of life. You're flowing with the current of life, and therefore the life itself begins to serve you as a handmaiden. That's how it is. It is the methodology I describe is different than most of the rah motivational uh, grind and pound and grind philosophy of a lot of coaches, where they attack life as if it is a war and a battle. I approach life more like a aikido or jujutsu uh, master. I flow with it. Don't need to fight it.
Absolutely. For people who would like to work with you and learn how to flow more with life and fight it less, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, you can come to my website. It's www.driyer.com. And, you can contact me, reach me. Happy to work with anyone. Everything in life, I say, requires time, energy, and resources. And if you have those three, you can make anything happen.
Absolutely. And is that the way to find the digital copy of your book you have for our audience?
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to email it to you.
Okay,
Um, I'll email ARC copy. You can put it up on the um, show notes.
I'll do that.
But just to make sure I have your email. What is your email?
Michael at uncommonteams.com.
Michael at
Uncommon
Uncommon Teams,
Teams,
TEAMS
TEAMS, yes, .com.
.com. Yeah, got it.
Okay.
All right. I will.
What would you go ahead?
Yeah. No, I'll send you the three. I'll send you digital copies of all three books, so we
Ah,
can
thank you.
pick and choose which you want to share.
Okay. What would you like to leave our audience with today?
The essence of life is this: the the understanding that we are not beings of narratives moving in space, but we are beings of space within which narratives move. And by flipping this fundamental standpoint around, you can, your entire life turns around. You garner for yourself the freedom that is the birthright of all human beings. That's the only take home lesson.
That's a big lesson, Dr. Moon. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today, Dr. Moon.
It was my pleasure.
And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Dr. Iyer and I would love to know, where are you flowing with life and what helps you do that? Thanks, and have a great day.